Black Myth Wukong is like that cheeky 8-10 date you once had. She looks great, she sounds wonderful, and there's plenty of action to keep you entertained, but when you wake up the next morning, you can't help but feel something is missing, enough holding her back from becoming your future wife. Now don't get me wrong, Black Myth is simply jaw-dropping at times, with a soundtrack that will have your ears tingling in all the right places. It plays very much like a martial arts movie on steroids, but just like that date, there are moments when you're left scratching your head, wondering why they didn't just sort out the obvious issues. So grab a pint, sit your asses down, and let's dive into the highs, the lows, and everything in between in today's review. Let's address the big hairy elephant in the room. Yes, Black Myth Wukong is definitely taking a page out of the Souls-like playbook, and you'll feel it from the get-go. You kick off as a scrappy little monkey, the kind you'd expect to see pacing around in the world's shittest zoo. But as you smack down enemies, you'll be snatching up their soul wisps like you're hoarding pints at the local boozer, gradually bulking up from a flea-bitten primate into the Jackie Chan of the monkey world. And with over 90 bosses to face, you're in for a proper fight. But don't worry, it's not Elden Ring levels of sadism here. There's enough variation and a bit of a helping hand from its spells and abilities that will prevent you from hurling your controller across the room. This is where Wukong really starts flexing its muscles, showing off with the sheer number of options you've got for character development. It's not just about bulking up your health or stamina like you're hitting the gym. You've got the basics covered, sure, but as you dive deeper, you can start fine-tuning your monkey's martial arts skills, creating devastating attacks or nimble movements that would make even the most seasoned Shaolin monk break a sweat. As you unlock spells, you'll be whipping out some seriously powerful moves that will leave even the toughest bosses looking like they've just gone 12 rounds with a wrecking ball. One of my personal favourites is the duplicate ability. Fully upgraded, it conjures up a cheeky little army of monkeys, all taking turns to smack some poor sod around with their staffs. It's pure chaotic brilliance. There are plenty of other spells to master too, each one holding a special place and usually an Achilles heel to defeating a difficult boss. And the best bit, when you hit a checkpoint marked by lighting up a scented stick at those prayer monuments, you can rejig your abilities and recalibrate your strategy completely free of charge. So if a boss is giving you grief, say they're spewing poison everywhere, you can load up on resistances and give yourself a fighting chance. This ever-evolving character build system is what sets Wukong apart, making the whole experience feel deeply rewarding from start to finish. Combat in Wukong is a bit of a double-edged sword. It's all about personal preference really on where you land with it. On one hand, it's dead simple. You've got your basic light and heavy attacks plus a dodge button, and to be honest, it's pretty forgiving. Combos, just mash those buttons like you're typing out an angry email, and spam dodging will eventually get you that perfect evasion, leaving your enemies baffled as you pop up behind them, ready to deliver a proper smackdown. The only thing you really need to keep an eye on is your stamina, but that refills quick. With the right upgrades, you'll be back to fighting fit in no time. The general mobs, they're pushovers, truth be told, unless you charge in like a lunatic. It's the bosses that will give you a run for your money. Each one's been crafted with care, sporting unique mechanics that keep things fresh. They've got their attack patterns, their weak spots, but none of them feel utterly insurmountable. Don't get me wrong, this isn't a walk in a park either. You'll die plenty and there'll be that one boss that feels impossible. But unlike Elden Ring, when you're half dead before you even reach the boss, only to get obliterated in seconds, Wukong's got your back. It gives you just enough of a helping hand to keep things from feeling like a slog. For most players, this is perfect, but if you're craving the same brutal challenge as Elden Ring, you might be left a bit disappointed here, and dare I say it, you might think Wukong is a bit too friendly for the casuals. Personally, as a busy bloke with a life outside of gaming, I much prefer Wukong's more forgiving gameplay. What really keeps you hooked in Wukong though, isn't just beefing up your character, but the thrill of upgrading your weapons and armour. It's like a treasure hunt. Defeat a side boss, snag a special item, and suddenly your staff's got a shiny new ability. This adds a proper incentive to track down every boss you can find, and trust me, it's worth the effort because these upgrades make your journey a hell of a lot smoother. But this urge to uncover every item, loot every chest and explore every nook and cranny of the map also exposes one of Wukong's most glaring and frustrating design flaws. It's here then that keeps Wukong firmly in the 8-10 category and prevents it from achieving its full potential. We'll dive into the game world and graphics in more detail later, but as you can already see from the video, Wukong's world is an inviting space filled with rocky crags leading to ledges above or hidden alcoves with shallow lakes just begging to be explored. You'll spot vast spaces in the distance, almost certainly hiding a chest or two, but when you actually try to flex your monkey skills and start exploring, you're met with an invisible wall. Fair enough, you might think. They can't make every part of the map explorable, but the more you push the boundaries, the more you realise the whole world is like a cruel mirror maze where you hit wall after wall until it dawns on you that this seemingly open world is nothing but an on-rails beat-em-up in disguise. It's here then that the stark contrast with games like Elden Ring or even God of War become glaringly obvious. Where those games feel expansive and immersive, Wukong's exploration feels like a cheap trick, constantly reminding you of its limitations. Time and time again, you're left with that sinking feeling of disappointment, knowing how easily they could have given us just a bit more freedom. But for some reason, your agile monkey ends up feeling like a lame duck, held back by a world that promises so much but delivers so little. Another gripe with the exploration in Wukong is the utter lack of direction. No map, no compass, not even a hint of where you're supposed to be heading. And to make matters worse, the game doesn't offer enough unique landmarks to help you get your bearings. Take this snowy map here for instance. I was trudging around in circles, staring at the same reused rocks and trees, utterly baffled as to whether I'd already been here. It's like trying to navigate a bloody IKEA without a floor plan. A simple map, even one that unlocks as you explore, would have done wonders here. Instead, you'll often waste 10 to 15 minutes fast travelling between checkpoints, desperately searching for that elusive path you thought you saw earlier, only to be met with yet, yeah you guessed it, another invisible wall. The sad truth is, if they put a bit more effort into refining the exploration and cutting down on that frustration, Wukong could have absolutely knocked this one out of the park. Now back to the good stuff, let's talk about those graphics and the world design. Simply put, it's stunning. I wasn't sure what to expect going in, but it certainly wasn't this. The world is packed with density and detail, vegetation crowds the edges of pathways, ancient stone monuments loom over the land, and light shimmers through the leaves. Everything here reacts to your presence in ways that feel almost magical. Bushes flex as you stroll past, footprints leave their mark in the sand, and even your staff leaves its own impression in the world. The attention to detail then is just pure chef's kiss. The design of each map, split into 6 distinct chapters, keeps things fresh with enough variation to prevent things from going stale. The first chapter is the real showpiece, with its lush green forest thick with life, but Wukong is on a mission to take you through a range of biomes, each with its own unique style, and if you're lucky enough to crank up the settings to max, you're in for a visual feast of particle effects, whether it's that swish of your staff landing on enemies or the ethereal wisps of light guiding you to the next checkpoint. It's a treat for the eyes. The real showstoppers are the boss fights. Ice, wind, lightning, all filling your screen with dynamic lighting and high fidelity models that make each encounter feel epic. And let's not forget the animations. Everything here is fluid, like a well choreographed dance with nature as your monkey flings, spins and leaps through danger with grace. If I had to nitpick, I'd say the game does reuse some assets a bit too often, and a few more unique landmarks would help break up the deja vu feeling in some areas. Also, there is the occasional stutter. Nothing quite like being in the thick of battle and getting hit with a micro stutter as well as someone else's sword, as the game engine tries to shove more pixels down your throat than a Ron Jeremy movie. But overall, Wukong is easily the best looking game of 2024, hands down. And that grace carries on with the sound. The Chinese inspired music is absolutely glorious, a real treat for your eardrums, especially in headphone mode. It will leave you grinning like a Cheshire cat. It's so refreshing to be immersed in Chinese culture, and I sincerely hope more games in the future bring this level of flair and authenticity. And one of my biggest worries going in was how the voice acting would pan out, given that you're a monkey chatting with wolves and all that shit. But let me tell you, they've absolutely smashed it. No cheesy lines, nothing that makes you cringe. Everything is delivered with purpose and flair, keeping the immersion intact. But the real winner here, the sound effects. Every little interaction in the game has its own sound, from the subtle rustling as you walk through vegetation to the earth-shaking booms of lightning strikes. The level of detail is so rich that if you play this any other way than with headphones, you're doing yourself a disservice. Plug in, crank up the volume, and let your brain be fully transported into Wukong's glorious world. It's an audio experience that you don't want to miss. So as you can probably tell, we're pretty smitten with Black Myth Wukong here. The rags to riches witch's tale, exceptional sound design and stunning worlds make this a spectacular entry from the fine folks at Game Science. It hits that sweet spot of difficulty, offering a solid challenge without tipping into the realm of brutal, and the character progression and abilities are an absolute joy to mess around with. But it is a shame, really, because this game was so close to perfection, so close to nabbing our coveted 10/10 score. The exploration though, it's just all a bit of a letdown. The reality is, this is a highly guided RPG, with invisible walls popping up like roadblocks everywhere, leaving you feeling ironically trapped in these vast open spaces. It doesn't seem to want you to explore, and the lack of a compass or map system only hammers that point home. Wukong wants you to focus on what it does best, beating the living daylights out of folks with your stick. And you know what? I'm alright with that, because this game will rightfully be many people's game of the year in 2024. Until next time, lads and lasses, Midlife out.